Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitbadger.com, out here for part 2, the High Desert Brutality, this time talking about my experience in Partizan Division. If you haven't seen part 1 or are unfamiliar with Brutality Matches, they're pretty fun. Basically, two-gun competition with a number of different stages, usually a 180-second par time, 3 minutes, and there's a physical component and a shooting component, and honestly, they're just a lot of fun. So while I went out and I ended up shooting High Desert Brutality, 2 different divisions, already put out one video shooting in the Irons division, which was fun. Shooting in Partizan was a completely separate competition because basically gear. So in Partizan division, you had your rifle as well as a pistol, and you had a number of points. So in the Brutality match, High Desert Brutality, there's a number of different divisions and they all kind of have their own kind of gear requirements. And with Partizan, as mentioned, rifle, pistol, 3 points, and you use them kind of however you want, whether it's extended magazines on your pistol, or I think on your rifle, that would be respectively a point, or an optic. Definitely want an optic on the rifle. Opted for a 3-18 by Primary Arms, and spent another of my 3 points on a bipod for my rifle, and the last point, a optic on my pistol. So that was my 3 points, and then of course you needed associated gear for that division as well as some other divisions where you need to carry, I want to say 4 rifle mags, 2 pistol mags, beginning of every stage, like had to have at least that, as well as a 4-inch blade, at least 4-inch blade, and a med kit, 1 liter of water, and probably something else in there that I might be forgetting. But yeah, went out there and got after it. The first stage I ended up shooting there was the Wasteland stage. Really awesome stage, in part because basically role players. It was set up more or less post-apocalyptic, and you started off in a tent, chained up, and by chained up I mean a chain with basically a locking carabiner. But undo that, go out, and one of the guys is like, hey, enemy coming, hands you weapon, pistol, and you basically engage a number of steel targets. After that, there's a pistol spinner. Fortunately, I actually got it this time. I did not when I was shooting irons. And then after that, you end up going ahead and grab your long gun, grab a satchel full of ammo. You put all your magazines into it beforehand, and then take a dummy. Drag it back to a barrier from behind cover, engage a number of targets at I believe 3, 4, and 500 yards. After that, after engaging all those targets with hits, drag your dummy back to another barricade, repeat the same thing, and then, time permitting, get all the way back up to the van and engage that target at 500 yards with 1 hit. After that, there was the option for DMR. So there's DMR targets that were kind of a bonus. I did not have time to actually shoot that or shoot those targets from that stage. More on that in a minute. But yeah, overall that was a really fun stage, in part just having like role players kind of help immerse you in that. And yeah, it was a good way to start the day off. That second stage on day 2 was Sniper Tower. So you end up going up, not under the clock, but you go up, you get in position, and there's a number of cards corresponding to a number of targets. I want to say 5, ranging anywhere from about 200 yards to around 400 yards or so. And the way it would work is you would turn over a card. It would say, hey, target 3. You would look, find target 3, engage it with a hit, turn over the next card, target 1, find target 1, so on and so forth till you get your 5 hits. And then you would actually move up to shoot off of one of the railings. Same process, flip card over 1 at a time. Then, if you had time, and depending on your division, or yeah, I guess depending on your division, there were DMR targets. And a number of the stages had them, and they were basically further targets, and they would tell you like a known distance, like, hey, this is how far the target is. And beforehand, you'd be like, that's it out there. If you hit the target, I forget exactly how it broke down, but it was basically a bonus. So you're like, sweet, not only that, but you get to shoot more, which is pretty fun. So I managed to get through all of those shots as far as the hits I needed, had time for the DMR target. Mind you, the clock's still running. So went, hopped down, dialed real quick, and went to go take my shot. So long story short, did not get the DMR target. But here's the thing, rather than being a bonus, it turns into a penalty. Because if you don't hit it, whenever your last shot, that's where the time stops. And so that was a good learning point. After that, I didn't even bother. It was a complete waste of time, in my perspective, to try and go after the DMR targets. Because ultimately, unless you were totally locked on, which you probably weren't because you're working fast, heart rate, all that stuff. And as much as they tried to spot for you, if they didn't see an impact and if you didn't spot an impact, you're just shooting blind and just elongating your time. So I was like, we're done with the DMR targets, and moved on from there to the next stage. The next event was pretty cool. Basically, the stage was set up to where you started on a rooftop and you engaged one target over here and then turned, I want to say around 100 yards, and then turned, shot again off little mock rooftop, and 2 targets, I want to say at about 300 yards. After that, clear the gun out, run as fast as you can, back, go through a minivan, and then gas up the gun, engage another target or two with a couple rounds. Easy through a minivan, done that before. And then over the top of the minivan, engage and basically knock down a plate rack. Pretty fun little course of fire. And then after that, safe the gun, ground it, run up and over, and then a trench system essentially over there. And once you get down in there, pull your pistol out, charge it up, and start engaging targets as they present themselves. That unto itself was honestly really fun. That whole stage was a blast, to include the little minivan, but also being able to run through trenches and just engage targets as presented. That was a lot of fun running through there. And then finally the stage ended when you shot basically a low probability target, low piece of steel, knocked it off, and yeah, that ended that stage. And then our last stage on Saturday was pretty fun. All the stages are based off of some sort of pop culture, movie, video game, something like that. And so this one was actually based off of Metal Gear Solid. And so it started out, you had an IPSC target in front of you and your knife, air quote knife. For mine, I like my blade. I actually brought this really awesome prototype battle axe from Amtech Blades. So starting with that in my hand, on the buzzer, engage that cardboard, and then immediately retrieve your rifle, get up over a rock, and you had a number of targets. 2 static targets and then a rifle spinner. Shooting that SCAR and 6.5 Creedmoor, made that spinner go over really fast. And after that, basically you just clear the gun out. And once you've done that, run down this hill, and again, Metal Gear Solid. Mark 23, unfortunately, did not have a suppressor on it, but you had 1 round, take the safety off, engage a popper. After that, climb under into the shoot house and basically pistol work from there. Going through there, there was all kinds of largely low probability targets, to include a pistol spinner rather, with holes cut out kind of in the middle of it, and a no-shoot also involved. Had to make it past that, and then some other pistol steel with no shoots. And then finally the last part was a number of pistol steel, but there were not necessarily no shoots, but essentially hard cover in front of them, so other steel plates. And those were hard because you're basically trying to shoot through holes in the swingers to get the steel behind them. And honestly, I did not finish that stage. That one was hard. Even on day 1, or when I shot Irons Division, that stage ate my lunch also, but it was definitely a lot of fun. The range we were at down there is in Parma, Idaho, kind of middle of nowhere, kind of southwestern Idaho, high desert. And that night it was actually a lot of fun. I was down there with my boys. Jad actually helped film pretty much everything, chasing me with a little gimbal camera, and Ira was also there helping. And I talked to my boys, I'm like, hey, what do you guys want to do tonight? Well, just so happened actually there locally was probably one of the few remaining drive-in theaters. So my son and I ended up going to the drive-in. It was a lot of fun. But that next morning, it's time to get back after it, time to do some more shooting. So we started this time on arguably kind of one of the coolest stages, again, going back to pop culture, which this one was basically modeled after Starship Troopers. The movie, not necessarily the book, but it was a ton of fun. You started out with a cannon and there was a hole simulating basically a grenade launcher and like a bug hole. Take your shot with a cannon for basically bonus points. After that, you have to engage a static steel, one of the bugs, and then run and gun. Running down, essentially kind of working your way through, engaging targets as presented. They had some pretty cool targets, basically painted up like bugs from Starship Troopers. In the middle was a like central nervous system shot, basically a clay pigeon that you could shoot that or get 3 or 5 respectively, depending on division. So if you're shooting heavy, like something other than 5.56 or 7.62 by 39, then 3 shots on it, otherwise 5. And then basically work your way down through it.
Go. I don't have a grenade.
And then finally getting onto a platform that moves, simulating the part of the movie where Rico's on top of the bug, shooting into it, and then tossing his grenade, and you end up doing that. Then finally rounding out the stage, shooting at static steel. For my own part, they had forgotten to give me my grenade, so I didn't get to throw the grenade in there. I just shot down into the bug. But that stage was honestly just a lot of fun. After that, went over to the next stage, which basically started next to this plain fuselage. There was a dummy, essentially a bunch of, I want to say it was like fire hose wrapped up inside some BDUs, and on the buzzer, you would drag it out of the fuselage over to your first shooting position. From there, engage a number of steel up on the hillside, and then take your dummy, drag them over to the next firing position, engage another set of steel on the other hillside, then leaving the dummy there, basically grab your gun, charge up the hill. Once up to the top, you'd engage a number of rifle steel on basically those 2 different sets of rifle steel you'd shot on either hillside, and then there was a far shot you needed to engage to finish the rifle portion. I want to say around 250 yards. After that, you drew out your pistol, and it was time to shoot all of the pistol steel. Again, 1 array on one side of the hill, 1 array on the other. Definitely a fun little course of fire. That next stage was kind of a staple of all the Brutality events, where it's Casarda. So a certain element will largely be the same in that there's a kettlebell, and you're swinging the kettlebell, you're going to where it lands, and you're shooting, and you're moving past barriers or markers basically, and each marker you get past is a deduction from your time, like a bonus. And so you basically go until you either complete it or you get however far you get through it, and each one of those markers you pass is a bonus deducted from your time. So the way it was set up this time is you run up and get your gun, then engage, target up on the hillside, and I want to say it was 2 hits with like a intermediate cartridge and then 1 hit with a heavier cartridge. So shooting 6.5, or if someone was shooting 308, you only needed 1 hit. This was honestly probably pretty sure is the best stage I ended up shooting. It was set up like for my setup, to where you throw the kettlebell, get down there. On my gun, I had that bipod, and unlike some bipods, this one actually extends quite a bit, the Magpul bipod, so I had plenty of elevation. Some people had like a Harris 6-9 where you just couldn't get the elevation to actually shoot off the bipod, or when I was shooting irons on day 1, yeah, I basically had to shoot off of the kettlebell to basically get enough elevation. But that setup, not to mention the 3-18 optic, blazed through that. That stage was a ton of fun. And then finally, the last stage, Red Dawn. Basically, it starts out where you have an array of pistol targets in front of you on the buzzer, draw out, engage the poppers, and then drop your magazine and engage that last target. After that, you got a clear pistol, holster it, run, hop into the back of the truck bed. Once there, basically gas your rifle up, hit the truck, be like, hey, let's get out of here. Again, Red Dawn, trying to drive out of the city, shoot some communist paratroopers coming in. And with that, there was basically 2 different steel targets. You engage one until you can no longer engage, and then as soon as the other one presented itself, you can engage that. For my own part, my gun, last day of the competition, last stage, it was pretty choked up with dirt. I was fighting it some, but once you end up getting back, truck stops, clear your gun out, hop down and go over and start engaging from a number of different shooting positions. Initially shooting an array of targets at I believe around 500. Once you get hits on those, move over to another fighting position, engage the targets at I believe around 400, and then finally the last shooting position, engage the targets at 300. Overall, the competition was a ton of fun. On the one hand, stage design, it was really cool. I mean, it all tied back in every stage to some sort of like pop culture, video game, movie, something like that. And yeah, it was fun. Also, there's so many competitions, or for that matter, even if you just go to a range, to a shooting course or something like that, and you're shooting a rifle, you're usually shooting at like 50 yards. And so here, aside from a couple stages, pretty much everything started at about 200 yards and went out to like 500 yards, which was definitely fun to also just, stretch rifle shots out. Unlike, honestly, most competitions. And part of it is limitations to a lot of ranges. I will say the DMR side of the competition, after I tried shooting the one and I ended up with like a 40-second penalty because of it, I was like, that's not really that fun. And there's probably a way to make it to where it's actually a bonus or nothing but a bonus rather than a penalty, like if you end up missing. But I like the idea of it. Execution, maybe not as much. But again, just the match, like vanilla without any of the DMR stuff, it was a blast. And part of it is the people. I mean, people come out to this to go have fun. And that's reinforced a couple ways. One, the way the divisions are set up, you have people dressing up and LARPing, which is fine because it's fun. And I mean, honestly, most people end up doing every day at the range, because you probably don't wear a plate carrier or a battle belt in daily life. You're playing dress up again, which is fine because again, it is a lot of fun. Something that also lends to the competition as far as drawing a group of people is the way the prize table is done, when there is a prize table. We're on that in a second. But the way it works is basically it's a lottery. So because of that, since there's not first, second, and third, and you get to go clear the prize table, there's no sponsored shooters. No one's there in a jersey or anything like that. I will say there's kind of been wild inconsistency in the prize table. I went in 2020 Desert Brutality, amazing prize table, again, lottery, and everyone got to go through and get something because prizes are fun. Then the next Desert Brutality, maybe 2022, I don't think there was a prize table at all. Then Midnight Brutality, insane prize table. There was honey badgers from Q, suppressors, B.E. Myers Mall, Key, all kinds of stuff. That was pretty amazing. And then this one, I didn't stick around. I think there was a rifle and maybe a couple lowers, but I think that was it. And honestly, part of the reason I didn't stick around is because more important things. It's community day for Pokemon Go, so my boys went and we went and played Pokemon Go because I was grateful for them hanging out the weekend, filming and helping me out. But overall, it was a really fun match. One thing that was kind of a bummer is my best stage, Casarda. I think I came in second overall in the entire match on that stage, and they just threw that whole stage out. And I was like, but that was my best stage. And I'm not sure the reasoning. I don't know what the reasoning was. I don't know if it just broke them off and they're like, I'm not running it, which is weird because brutality's in the name. But at any rate, the whole stage got thrown out. Kind of a bummer. I still got to run it though, and it was definitely a lot of fun. But overall, definitely just a really fun match. Enjoyed it, and like I said, good group of people out there and really fun stage design. But there'll be links down below if you want to check out, see any of the other Brutality matches here stateside or overseas for that matter. And as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.